Here's another video in the Wogdon reconstruction series. So, although I've now finished the pistol, we're going to have a look at a couple of aspects that I haven't covered very in detail before. One of them is Wogdon's ramrod. Now, Wogdon, when he made a pair of pistols, equipped one of them usually, in fact almost always when they were dueling pistols, with a with a powder measure on the end of a rod, which I'll explain to you later. The other thing we're going to cover is the finishing of the wood, at least the first stages of it. The wood started out, if you can see the difference, that was the colour of the walnut that started out for the stock. So what I'll be doing is covering really how I got it looking like it does. So there we are. So we're going to go and now we'll have a look at a couple of videos on those things. One of the unusual features of Wogdon's dueling pistols was that with every pair of dueling pistols, one of them had a ramrod which doubled as a powder measure and also allowed you to get the powder right into the breech of the gun without having to tip it in from the muzzle. So I had a look at this. I thought that I would make one for my pistols. So in my usual fashion, I roughed one out to see how it went and to see what it looked like and to make sure it fitted. And then I can make make sure I make the ramrod pipes that will accept it, and then I'll go back later on and make a decent job of it. But so what we're looking at is my rough version of it. So here's the pistol. There we are. That's how far we've got. I've taken the trigger guard off and sent it off to the assay office to get it hallmarked. I've got the lock out. I've fettled up the bits of the lock, and the lock is now complete. So here's the loading rod. So let's have a look at the ramrod rather. So let's have a look at Wogdon's ramrod. So it has this quite heavy end to it, and we can home in a bit on here. So this is really quite a hefty piece of brass, and it's in two parts. So there's this part which is the measure, and this part which is the fixing on the rod. So the measure, and then this part, the rod bit has two threads on it. It's got a large thread, which is actually in this one 9/32 by 26 BSF thread, and then a small thread which is number 6 UNF. And so the way that works is that the end here has a hole bored down the middle of it. So that's your powder chamber. So that's in this case got a 6mm hole down the middle, and it's tapped to fit onto the fitting there. So that's the way it's carried when it's in the pistol. And then this small thread goes into a thread at the end of the receptacle here, and so when you want to use it, you screw that on there. Now the object of having this measure is partly that this is a measure, so you can always get the right amount of powder, which is fairly, if you're using these things for precision shooting. I mean, if you're in a gallery and doing target shooting, then you really want to use exactly the same powder charge each time. So here's your measure. The other thing, which if you're really pedantic and you want to achieve a good result, you can do what the rifle shooters usually do, which is to ensure that you put the powder into the breech of the barrel. So the powder goes into the breech of the barrel rather than being poured in from the muzzle, and with the possibility that some of it will stick to the sides and it'll get kind of compressed and messed about as you put the ball down. So the idea is you take the end off the rod and you screw it on. Then holding it vertically, you fill it with powder. And I've measured this one. This one, it takes about 0.9 of a dram, which is a little bit less than probably I would say was ideal. I'd probably say a dram would be a good charge for a pistol of this size. So having got the powder in there and holding this thing vertically, you would then tip the pistol up so that the muzzle was down, and put the rod right up inside the barrel, and then you'd just invert the whole lot, and that would deposit the powder directly into the combustion chamber, and so you wouldn't then lose any powder down the sides of the barrel. So that was the principle. Then you just take it out, put it back on there, put it in the barrel, whoops, and there you are. So that's quite convenient, quite fun thing. But he was as far as I know, Wogdon was the only person who used these loading rods, ramrods. So anyway, there we are. So that's my prototype. I will at some point get round to making a proper one with a decent ramrod, and I'll get the lines a bit better and the whole thing working just a little bit better. I may the rest of the pistol has got silver furniture. I may possibly, if I'm feeling really extravagant, I may cast up some blanks for this and machine it up out of silver, or possibly I might leave it in brass, or I might silver plate the brass and so it looks as if it's made of silver. We shall see. Well, we're back at working on the Wogdon now, and I've finally got the stock into a shape and a finish that I can go with. So the first thing I've done is to give it a coat of Van Dyke crystals dissolved in water with a little teeny bit of ebony, water-based ebony-based stain in it to dull it down. So you can see from this one that didn't work the colour that the wood I'm using was, and so it looks really quite dull now. It'll brighten up like mad, and that will just tone it down. Here's a little piece that I did a try on. That's the Van Dyke crystals, and then I've gone over the top of it with boiled linseed oil, which has been soaking in alkanet root for about 2 years or something. So it's really red. It's a quite strong red colour, and you can see the tissue I used to spread it on with is really quite pink. Colour rendering is always a bit funny on cameras. I've got it set up and the lights variable, but anyway, that's the sort of colour, and that's how dark it got. That wood hadn't been finished. That was just the sawn finish or the routed finish, but it'll go really quite dark, and it'll have a sort of reddish overtone, which you can see on there. So that's the next step, and I'll show you what that comes out like when I've done it. Now we're just going to put a coat of the first coat of oil on. This is boiled linseed oil that's been sitting on alkanet root for a couple of years, and then I've diluted it 50% with pure turpentine because I want it to soak right in. So that just needs to go on as richly as possible. So that it just, and then basically keep doing that until you put it on the inside. In some places I probably shan't bother to put it on the inside of the locks and things. But there we are. And then that will hopefully soak in. And then we can start thinking about grain filling once we've done that. The grain filling will be done with probably with talcum powder, because that's transparent when it's in oil. So you can put talcum powder in mixed up with the linseed oil, rub it in, and it'll fill the grain, and but it won't actually go cloudy. So that's a good thing. So we just put that all over it. And of course it soaks into the end grain. The end grain will get much darker than the side grain. But there we are. Beginning to look sort of respectable colour. So we'll end up putting lots of coats on here, I'm sure. But we start doing it. Only the first couple or three coats will have alkanet root in them, because they'll be establishing the reddish colour in the wood. After that we'll go to plain linseed oil we'll put some beeswax in it and a bit of dryers. I'm not particularly interested in the dryers on this one because I want it to soak in. But we'll put some dryers on the turbine I use. So there we are. That just needs leaving until it soaks in. It doesn't. I'll probably have a look at that after about 3 or 4 hours later on this evening, and if there's any great puddles I'll wipe them off so that everything stays more or less even. There we are. So that can sit there and soak in its oil. Right.